My name is Erik Van Horn. I bought my first franchise in my 20s, and since then, I've owned 6 brands with 25 stores in 8 states. I've also helped 1,000 people find the right franchise for them. People like us who are not cut out for the 9 to 5 and like to work smarter, not harder. How do we find the right franchise, buy it, grow it, sell it, and how do we do it in a way to own the business without it owning us? Those are the questions, and I'm on a mission to give you the answers. Welcome to Franchise Secrets. Welcome to Franchise Secrets Podcast with your host, Erik Van Horn, and today's guest is Michael Kaplan. He started out as a franchisee and then in the service-based industry and then went into many other things, which I found fascinating. And I wanted to bring him in here just so franchisees, one, you can see like where else you can go. You're not just in your franchise system. There's other verticals you can go into during or after your franchise. And then, as everyone knows here, I'm getting into the roofing, siding, and gutter franchise space as a franchisor. And so that's, one of the reasons I wanted to reach out to Michael a while ago, and we had a great chat, and he's doing some micro investments in some service-based businesses and masterminds. And so I was really excited just about talking to him. I learned a lot and I wanted to bring him on the show. So Michael, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to keep talking.
Absolutely. So I was just looking over at my whiteboard, and I have, it's like a 8-foot whiteboard, and I got, tons of notes from our call the other day. But why don't you go back to the beginning of your story, how you got started into that service-based franchise, and then we're just going to go all kinds of different directions. And really, I want the goal of this podcast, at the end of this podcast, I want people to have a greater understanding for the service-based businesses in franchising and all around. So that's my big goal. But go ahead, man. How did you get started?
I never really had a goal of becoming a franchisee. It just kind of happened that way. But the first business that I really looked at, I grew up eating Jimmy John's. There was one in Minnesota, and it's where you could buy your pot and your sandwiches. And between those two, what else do you need as a 17, 18-year-old? So went to college out in Maine and thought, Jimmy John's in Boston, I'm going to make $1 bazillion. It's going to be perfect. And so got a job at Jimmy John's going into my senior year and thought, all right, I'm going to open Jimmy John's. Moved to Georgia to Judge Barbecue and open, Jimmy John's in Boston. I was getting all my numbers together and talking to the franchisor. And I had an epiphany one day and realized, wait a minute, what if my tomatoes don't show up? How am I going to make sandwiches? Can I buy other tomatoes? Do I have a contract to buy tomatoes? Like, am I breaking my franchise agreement? How do I understand it? And so went to law school, decided, maybe I'm not ready. If I get stumped at tomatoes, let's get a head on my shoulder, look at an MBA, looked at a JD, then, wrote a bunch of business plans, spent a bunch of time trying to figure out, all right, how am I going to start up the next cool thing? This, right after the dot-com bust, we're like 04, 05, and wrote a bunch of bad business plans, destroyed them, threw them away. Fortunately, didn't make the investments, but came across opportunity to invest in a business turnaround in a carpet cleaning franchise.
So wait, where's law school in all of this? Was it did you go to law school?
Yeah.
So you went to law school. You have your JD.
I'm a doctor, baby.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Juris Doctorate.
Exactly. It was really good for me that, the way they teach you kind of figure out contingency planning, how to avoid problems by having learned about how people screwed up.
Yep.
And so when talking to a bank or signing a contract or negotiating a lease, I'm a terrible lawyer, but I can think like one.
Yep.
So I can kind of know where I need help and how to move things around. So going into my last year of law school, we bought this carpet cleaning company. It's called Zerorez.
Who's we?
The individual who found the business opportunity was a real estate agent, real estate developer, had a title company and a flipping company. And his name's Jim. And he was hunting with a guy named Ryan. And he said, hey, Ryan, what do you do? And Ryan was a friend of mine, worked at Stanley Steamer, carpet cleaning company. And he looked him up a couple weeks later and said, hey, I ran across this franchise thing that, Jim's a hustler and wanted to find other investment opportunities. So real estate guy meets carpet cleaner, says, hey, I'm going to buy this carpet cleaning company, this franchise. Do you want to come along or help me vet it and whatever? I had been looking to open a business with Ryan, the carpet cleaning guy's brother. So the four of us kind of got together. We had a bunch of happy hours and said, all right, we're going to solve all the world's problems one carpet at a time. We bought this carpet cleaning company. It had 3 trucks, 2 employees doing maybe 20, 25 grand a month and losing money. And the franchise system was young. Maybe that's a polite way to say it. It needed some more time in the oven. So they had this really cool process. And I don't know if you've heard of Zerorez, but they use electrolyzed oxidative water, magic water, instead of using soaps and shampoos. But they built all their own equipment. They built their own cleaning tools, and they didn't really have a model for how to go out and execute. Now, Papa John, love him or hate him, he made a lot of pizzas before he started franchising. These guys had not cleaned a lot of carpets before franchising.
And that's common out there. I mean, that's way too common out there in franchising.
Being able to sell an idea and being able to execute on the idea are very, very different.
Yep.
We bought it knowing it was underdeveloped, got what we thought was a good deal, went to school on the model, traveled the country trying to figure out in franchise and outside of franchise, how do you communicate the value to your customers so the value exceeds the price? Because that gap is where the magic happens. How do you effectively deliver the service model? What equipment should we use? How do you market it? And, just got our butts kicked for, 2.5 years. Well,
that's a long time.
2 years, right? Oh, yeah. Our first, 6 months in business, like month 6, I called about everybody I knew and said, hey, I'm about to go out of business. So could you get some freaking carpet cleaned? And, we end up making it, but we didn't really thrive until the end of 2008. At the end of 2008, we got some good press. I had been hunting down a newspaper man trying to get published in the big Minneapolis newspaper, the Star Tribune. Finally, it comes out September 11, 2008, and, our phones lit up. 7 lines lit up for 7 weeks. I mean, we just blew up. Meanwhile, the world collapses, right? Lehman goes under.
We're in the middle of a world collapse right now, even bigger than 2008.
Well, my business was born in the collapse and thrived because of it. And maybe that's a moral of the story here. So we start booming. The world collapses. We keep booming because, we're just this tiny little company. We started running 7 days a week, started doing 4 or 5 jobs per truck instead of 2 or 3. And then the dust settles, the phone stops ringing a little bit. And we looked around the world and said, well, okay, when we bought the company, we inherited a radio program, right? We were advertising on a local radio station poorly. We flipped a coin, heads on marketing, tails on accounting. I got marketing.
The attorney gets marketing.
Yeah, perfect, right? Couldn't do accounting either. So perfectly qualified. And I bought radio really poorly for years. Well, the world collapses, end of 2008, beginning of 2009, we sit all of our vendors down and said, hey, so everyone but us has fired you guys. No car dealerships are advertising, no insurance companies. PepsiCo's not marketing potato chips and pop. What if instead of giving away the unsold inventory, what if you give it to me? And we said, well, it doesn't make a lot of sense because the unsold seat flies with the airplane, right? Give it to me and we will pay you when we get jobs. We'll kind of do a pay-per-click, but on radio. And one by one, they said, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. They all told me where to, shove it, except one station. And we came up with kind of a hybrid of my proposal. Month 1, we got our butts kicked. Month 2, we booked more jobs than we had capacity to do. We could do about 400 jobs a month. We brought in about 450 from that media source. Plus we had referrals. Plus we had repeats.
What was the difference? Like, what was it?
Month 1 versus month 2?
Yeah.
So month 1, I wrote pretty bad ads and I had the talent reading the ads. So we hired, one of the people on the station to, as part of the show, go through and tell the story. And she didn't really click. And our price was, very, very high because we had, a lot of mouths to feed and said, well, let's extract the value on the front end rather than selling it in the home. And we realized pretty quickly, all right, this isn't going to work. So month 2, we said, Michael will be the talent with the radio personality and we'll do a sandwich. She does the intro. I give the meat and potatoes and then she does the offer at the end. We cut the price by probably 60%.
The front end price.
the front end price, the introductory, get the wheels rolling
Yep.
price. So we will show up for way less, but we unbundled. So instead of being
Yep.
all these services together, you get one. And when we're on site, we'll add value based on your needs. We'll do some consultation and sell through the transfer of benefits and enthusiasm rather than over the radio. So let's just get them on the schedule and figure it out in the home.
This is super important because I haven't had a lot of guests on here that talk like this. And this is marketing, copy, influence, persuasion. And I think a lot of people right now living in this coronavirus age right now, people are going to have to shift and people are going to have to understand marketing better than they understood it before. And like what you're talking about, the difference is you understood it's not just the radio personality. You needed to get in there and deliver the meat and potatoes, but more than that as well, it was the offer. So you were leading with the service was $200 or whatever it was. Month number one was you can come in and use our carpet cleaning. And we're going to charge you X, Y, and Z, $200. Then you flipped it to say, get in at the introductory price of, $49.99 or whatever it is to get them in there. And then you're face to face. And then you could start to upsell them to the high ticket or your normal ticket price, which was whatever it was, probably what you were offering before. Did you see your ticket price increase as a result of being able to sell face to face, or was that kind of the highest price point that you were going to get anyway?
When we unbundled, we actually saw the price go down. Our job average went from probably close to $400 to about $300, $320.
Okay.
But the truck was full.
Yep.
And if you only get 2 customers on a truck, you're still paying all the same fixed expenses and we were upside down.
So the per job was less, revenue per truck per day was more.
Correct. Yep. And with that economies of scale, as you get bigger, you can have better geographical routing. You can work a lot of the efficiencies that, if you've got a 4-job schedule versus a 40-job schedule, it's a big difference. So at the end of 2008, we had cleaned about $1.2 million in carpet, which was, up pretty good from doing $320 when we bought it.
Yeah.
But we're still getting our butts kicked. But 2009, we did $2.5 million.
Really?
Then 2010, we did $5 million, $8 million, $11 million consecutive years.
Was that because you had referrals and reputation and stuff that came in there, or is it you're doubling down on advertising?
We had a media model that was a lever that we could put $1 in and get $4 back. And we had a willingness to take on the infrastructure and buy the trucks and scale it. And the competition in the market, much like today, got their asses kicked by, one, us being out there, being the only people advertising, and 2, market forces pushing them down. 4 months ago, highly leveraged, shitty run businesses were thriving.
Yep.
Because,
it's true.
Rising tide raises all ships.
Yep.
Today, there's going to be a lot of carnage and wreckage and destruction. So I'm working with all the businesses that I'm invested in now saying, all right, if demand was at a 9 and when we come back, maybe we're at a 2 right now. When we come back, it's going to be a 5 or a 6. But there's only going to be 30% of the competition because a lot of people are going to be playing defense, caught flat-footed. And how can we prepare to go out guns blazing and take some shots and get in front of the market, because it's going to be all you can eat buffet. I mean, customers, especially in home service right now, there is pent-up demand that is going to be unleashed.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. End of the summer, I'm not smart enough to know or dumb enough to guess, but soon there will be people calling like crazy. And in some of my markets, people are still calling. I'm primarily in exterior services, roof cleaning, gutter cleaning, window washing.
What was the transition? And then where are you now in the gutter cleaning and all of that type of space? So
Zerorez, we grew it into 6 locations, doing about 18 million. And I would say 4 of the 6 were very high functioning. 2 of the 6 were acquisitions, and there were deals to be made. So we made them rather than saying this is the right market for us. Maybe we overextended a little bit as well, but partnership rift and just realized, life's too short and there's lots of ways to make dollars. I'm going to work with people I want to work with, and I'm going to do things based on my moral compass. using our buy sell agreement, I said, hey, here's the number. You want to buy or sell? My partner said, I want to buy.
Real quick on that, I mean, this is a great point, but anybody that is in a partnership should have a buy-sell agreement, and it should be something simple. Number gets thrown out. If you're the one that triggers that, let's say you and I are in partnerships, I give you a number, and you can either choose to buy or sell it based on that number. Is that kind of how it worked for you?
How many kids do you have?
3.
Okay. So one of them cuts the Reese's Pieces, the other gets to choose.
Yep.
If I cut and choose, I'm going to take the biggest piece, and that's not fair. So we had the Reese's Pieces or peanut butter cup solution to break up in our buy sell.
That is so simple, but so important, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to have this big model and all of that, because that model changes. The way you value it changes. So this is super simple. So I just want to stop there because someone's going to hear this, do it, and then come back and thank us later. So anyway, so buy sell got triggered. Next.
And you made a really important point. Anytime, even if it's family, always have a written agreement, because if you're playing Monopoly and you don't talk about what the rules are, because everyone kind of tweaks the board game a little bit. If you don't work those rules out before you're playing and before emotions are high, it gets really, really messy.
Yep. It's more comfortable then than it is having an uncomfortable conversation about the whatevs in the beginning.
Decided I was going elsewhere. So I took a check in the end of June of 18 and launched kind of 4 business models from there. So the first plays off my home service experience. It's micro investment. Usually it's micro, but we've done a couple bigger ones. But investment in home service entrepreneurs where they're doing $1 million in pressure washing in Poughkeepsie, or 600,000 or whatever, gutter cleaning in Texas. And it's really more of an investment in the entrepreneur than in the business, because with Rick's window washing, if Rick gets hit by a bus, there is no business, right? The employees are there because they love Rick. The customers are there because they love Rick. And if Rick goes away, there aren't layers of management. You don't have a sustainable business. So you bought a customer list and some squeegees for too much money. So what we're doing is helping Rick achieve his goals based on the market, helping him set the goals and figure out where he wants to go and what he wants to be, giving him a little bit of cash and buying a minority stake in the business, usually 30, 40% of the business. We're not trying to control it or run it. We're giving him a little bit of cash to go out and fire some shots and figure out where he can go. And we're coaching him up, because home service business is a home service business. Yep. And we've done it plenty of times.
Are a lot of those the exterior home services, or are we going into that next with the turnaround, with the next business model?
Mostly the micro investments are home service companies. Exterior, we've done some maid service and a couple other interiors. Cool. But looked at janitorial, looked at high-rise window cleaning, guys in superhero outfits scaling down hospital walls and crazy stuff. Mostly home services. The next business vertical I'm involved in is business turnarounds. This is kind of the primary that we're working on, going in and finding undercapitalized businesses or businesses that have dysfunction or aren't achieving in the way that if they could, vision board out, they're not high functioning, or maybe they're in transition. So we're either buying the company or investing with the business owners to help do a turnaround. There's always equity involved. Labor's okay, and it gets you paid, but equity's where we want to be. So we'll take a labor contract, but we'll buy in either through warrants or debt or just straight up equity.
Explain warrants, debt, and equity real quick.
Sure. So warrants would give us the right to buy in at a future price at a future time. So if we got the right to buy in at a $4 million valuation anytime in the next 4 years, we've got all the incentive in the world to help the company grow so that's worth at least 4 million or more. So it's investable. So if the business is worth 2 million, I'm not going to buy in at 4 million. So as part of a turnaround, it gives us incentive and upside to make it work. A debt investment is often coupled with warrants where we'll lend money to the company. So maybe we lend them $100,000 at a 8 or 10% interest, and we get some warrants with it. So maybe they're convertible where the debt goes away and it turns into warrants, or, there's all sorts of relationships. And then in a straight equity investment would be buying part of the stock. So maybe we buy 20% of the company based on whatever historical metrics are out there, how much money they made last year. We do a multiple of EBITDA or something.
So the difference between equity and warrants, there's some liability differences between the two. I mean, is that because if you take on equity and depends what kind of equity you're also like, you're part of that business. With warrants, it gives you the right to some of that. Is that one way to say it?
Yep, absolutely true. And, it depends on the types of agreements. And, if I'm a shareholder of the business and there's a capital call,
yep,
I'm putting more money in. If I'm a warrant holder, I have the right to buy into the business. If there's a capital call, I don't own it.
Nope.
But usually the strike price of warrants is higher than the current valuation.
Yep.
And that spread is where the magic is, because it gives me and my turnaround team the incentive to increase that value at or above the value of the warrants.
Perfect. I just wanted to get into that in case anyone wasn't familiar with all of those terms and context with it. So that's perfect. So now you said turnaround team. What does the team look like?
We're nimble.
Which is smart. I mean, like right now, that's a great word. Everybody wishes they were nimble and not fat right now.
So it's me and my business partner, Mike Dahlke. He's done a bunch of turnarounds. He's got a bunch of home service companies. He's kind of a finance ninja and leadership guru. And he's out in Nashville. I'm out in Minneapolis. We are the primary team, but we bring on the players that are needed if we need to bring on a CFO or a general manager, or, you kind of pick and choose from the bench of our network.
They don't need to be on your team, full-time people, but they are people that know you, you know them, and you can take them off the bench and plug them in when it's needed.
So if we need a sales guy to turn around a sales team that doesn't have any accountability and doesn't have sales metrics or goals, it'll probably be Mike, my business partner, who will start out and he'll frame it out, but then he'll pass it to the guy who wants to work in the business for 18 months and make it high functioning. We kind of go in, we triage, and then we bring in outside players so we can fire ourselves, have the value of the organization increase, and have our equity be worth something, and then go on to do the next.
Hey, it's Erik here. I hear from a lot of people that they're looking to buy their first brand or maybe their second or third brand, and they're not sure where to start, or they're not sure if they're looking in the right places. Well, that's where I come in. I help people find really good brands. And if you're thinking about your second or third or maybe your first brand, let's set up a time to talk. You can go to talkwitheric.com. That's ERIK, talkwitheric.com. Now back to the show. What's an example of a turnaround that, because I understand the micro investments and that made sense. What kind of turnarounds? Are they bigger type opportunities? Because it sounds like you're probably spending more time in the turnarounds. And if you're spending your time, it's probably a bigger payday at some point.
At the middle of last year, we invested in an electrician firm that was doing about $6 million in LED retrofits mostly. So they'll go into a warehouse, they'll replace the bulbs and fixtures with energy efficient systems, dimmers, auto timers, things like that, and bring in third-party financing, utilize the tax code and energy rebates to make it a cash flow positive transaction. So instead of spending money, you end up saving money relative to what you had been spending, and you got basically free lights. Really cool business model. They do a little bit of solar and a little bit of HVAC as well with their electricians. But they had some cooked books, which we found out through due diligence. One of the partners got kicked out before we invested. And what they had been touting as 750 in EBITDA, recalculated, was $1.2 million loss before we bought it. We had looked at buying in at a $3 million valuation. We ended up buying in at a $400,000 valuation. A little bit of a swing.
Yeah, just a bit.
What we did was we reworked our banking relationships. We right-sized the warehouse. a great example of the type of thinking we brought to the game. They were warehousing about 15,000 square feet of consignment product for their primary vendor. So we would get a commission if we sold it, but mostly we just used it. Highly inefficient, highly expensive. So we're downsizing to about 2,400 square feet, and we're renting a pod on every job. And for $300, there's our warehouse.
Yep.
Give the vendors the lockbox code. They throw our product in, and we went from 15,000 down to $300 for our warehouse per month. They were really smart guys, but really they didn't have a business model. They were great at electrical wattage and bad at the business stuff.
Yeah.
So we came in and said, hey, we can't spell electrician, but we know a thing or two about service models. Let's figure it out.
Is this one of the bigger turnarounds that you're doing? I'm sure you're always just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but is this one of the bigger ones that you're doing? You have a handful of those?
Yeah, that's kind of our sweet spot. We're working with a distillery out of Nashville. They've got a whiskey brand, a vodka brand, a seltzer brand. Right now they're making hand sanitizer.
They've had to shift.
Yeah, but they lost $500,000 last year, and their big problem, I mean, one of them, they've got a handful, but they've got a sales guy who took them from infancy to where they are, but not really the business guy.
Yep.
And so their factory floor, they do some co-packing. So they'll make vodka for a handful of different companies. They slap a different label on it, and they just get a markup on product.
So I'm guessing franchisees are thinking, how does a carpet cleaning guy go to helping a $6 million like distillery type facility get turned around? Because I'm thinking a lot of people that are listening are successful franchisees, but I don't think they know how much they really know and how valuable that is to other people. So how do you ever think back, like, I just got to cut my teeth with all these carpets that got cleaned?
Believe it or not, I never grew up saying, boy, I want to be in textiles. I want to clean. It just kind of happened. And I obsessed about model, obsessed about customer service, and really worked with the franchisor closely to rework our contracts. When it became clear that we kept pouring royalty into the bucket, but the bucket didn't get bigger to provide us more value, we had those conversations actively. And with young franchises, it's not uncommon that deals get re-inked. We re-inked several deals where we became a trainer for the franchisor and got a royalty share for that. We exited that agreement and worked on capping our royalty. And then we transitioned that to prepaying our royalty and effectively eliminating it. And if we could continue to grow, we would cash flow from it.
So that's important because you didn't see yourself as a carpet cleaning franchisee. You saw what you were good at, your skill set, and then what you were actually doing. I think a lot of people just say, I'm a franchisee of this, and they don't really understand what they're good at. And it's not just being a franchisee, they're good at all kinds of other things. So I like that. I think that's super important. I just want to, like I said, I've never had this type of conversation with this audience. I have these types of conversations all the time with friends of mine and people that are mentors and people that I mentor, but because I want them to think differently. So anyway, I think I just wanted to bring that point. So this distillery, you're kind of turning that around right now.
Real quick, you can work in your business or you can work on it. And my goal wasn't to be a carpet cleaner. And there's a difference between saying I want to own a Subway because I'm just passionate about being in the business. I'll greet the customers and wanting to make some money. Because you own a Subway, maybe you make 30 grand. You own 30 of them, 30, 30, 30, 30. You get economies of scale. You get better marketing buys, and that's how you create wealth.
Yeah.
And my goal was not necessarily to make a career in carpet cleaning, but how can I grow this, scale it, and transition it from Michael's answering the phones and out sucking rug with the team to let's have a team in place, and I can be in the office or I cannot.
Any franchisee out there can do that. You need to pull yourself out of the business, see what you're good at. And maybe some of it's you're good at teams. Maybe some of it you're really good at the marketing. Buddy of mine, Brian Holmes, he's my co-host on my other podcast. He owns Franchise Ramp. and he's really good at marketing. And that's, part of the reason he was so successful. So he started a marketing company. Now he's helping franchisees with it. So there's just a lot, there's so much opportunity that the normal average franchisee has out there if you just start thinking differently. So anyway, let's keep going. So now you're doing bigger turnarounds. So micro investments, bigger turnarounds. What else are you doing?
So we've got a collaboration / coaching / mastermind group. There's a handful of us in the group that are meeting monthly and kind of using the EOS or traction type model for goal setting and accountability.
So that's what Gino Wickman wrote the book Traction. And then out of that, EOS is the Entrepreneur Operating System. And we're using that as we are building out the roofing franchise. So it's all like we've got we've got the whole software and we're going through it. And we had somebody help us that's done it before, that has hired an implementer to help them implement it.
I hired an implementer in my business to help us through it. And
they read the book and they want to, and I don't know any different, but I was told get an implementer or have someone that has been with an implementer, because a lot of people start to try to do it and they don't have that. And I've heard it's just not nearly as effective. So where does EOS fit in with the mastermind?
EOS is super simple. And when you lay it out in 5 minutes, it's like, yeah, there's nothing to it. There's nuance, but the whole thing is, all right, what's your big, hairy, audacious goal? Where do you want to be in 10 years? Where do you need to be in 3 years to be on track for that? Where do you need to be in 1 year so that you're on track for your 3 years, so you're on track for your 10 year? What do you need to crush this quarter? Not what revenue do you need to produce, but what changes in your business systems need to evolve and happen, and what goals do you need to achieve over the next 3 months so you're on track for your 1, 3, and 10-year goals? And just working backward, I think, is the most valuable thing I got out of EOS, because so many businesses I talked to, and I did it myself for years, said, well, this is the most important thing. We're going to do this right now. But it wasn't part of a broader context of where I'm going. So if it's not part of that broader context, if you don't have a roadmap, how do you know? If you're trying to go north, how do you know that you're actually going north? Because I don't know what north looks like. 10-year goal is north. 3-year goal is on track for north. You eat the elephant one bite at a time. So we're helping people think through that via mastermind group. And then we've got live events each quarter, typically in Nashville. It's called the BBB, Business, Bourbon, and Bullshit. We take ourselves super seriously. But it started in my partner's basement. He and I and a couple of friends drinking too much bourbon, solving the world's problems. We said, you know what? We could make a thing of this. So now we have like 30 or 40 people come once a quarter and just jam on business and set goals, collaborate, figure out the most efficient allocation of resources, how to help each other.
Well, I think I might need to come to one of those.
You're definitely invited. It's pretty cool. And the rules are no assholes. You've got to be growth oriented. We don't want entrepreneurs who aren't really entrepreneurs. They inherited a business and really they're just W-2. Love people who are second generation, but you got to have some growth orientation. And then you got to bring a $10,000 idea that somebody could implement in their business and make $10,000 over the next quarter, because we figure it costs $1,000 for people to come, with travel and Airbnb and all that, car rental and all that stuff. We want to make sure people get a 10-to-1 ROI on the event.
So I like that last part a lot. I'm a part of a mastermind right now, and I pay a lot of money to be a part of it. And we have this thing at the end of every mastermind where everyone not everyone has to, but there's a handful of people that submit basically, an incredible strategy that nobody's been doing. And so strategies get submitted and they pick the top 10. And then the person goes up and presents it, and then everybody votes on the best one, and then they get some type of prize, But then it's all documented, and then it's given out to all of us in the mastermind, so we can be like, oh wow, so and so had this idea, and I have things that I've learned there. I'm like, just the other day, as I'm building out this roofing franchise, I'm like, this is how we need to do this because of something that I learned at that mastermind. So do people just love that part of it? I mean, I would imagine that's one of the best things about that group.
It's tricky. It is everyone's favorite thing. But when you look at EOS, and traction, you're trying to say, all right, I'm going to focus on the things that are tied to my longer term goals. I'm going to take baby chunks, and over the next quarter, I'm going to do these things. I'm going to shut out all the shiny ideas.
So hard, man. It's so hard.
But the $10,000 idea is by definition a shiny thing.
I know.
It's ironic, but it can be something that entrepreneurs are all over the place.
Yep.
They're squirrel chasers, that they need to have projects and goals, and you give the $10,000 ideas the candy or the dessert
Yep.
after they eat their mashed potatoes and do all the important project planning stuff.
It's really good. I'm serious about wanting to come to one of those. So how do you're doing different things, and I'm doing a lot of different things, but everything comes back to the core of what I do. What is the core of what you do? Because you're doing business turnarounds, micro investments. What else are you doing? And how is that? What's the main thing? How do you stay focused?
I'll tell you the last thing I'm doing, and then we'll see if I can make up an answer as to how I stay focused. The last thing I'm doing, like your friend, I started a media agency.
Yep.
I spent 12 years in my business at Zerorez with my partners buying media, bought over $2 million a year in radio, lots of digital assets. And when I exited the business, I kept getting calls from people in the industry as well as my network saying, hey, can you help me with this media problem? And I thought, you know what? At some point, rather than trying to fix someone else's botched media proposal, let me just do it for you and I'll take the commission. So it's niche. I've got a handful of clients, but I'm working with them on their business as much as on their media. So I'm looking at, you can't say, well, let's just buy radio. How are you tracking it? How are you measuring conversions? What's the ROI? What does the ROI need to be? How much can you spend to acquire a customer? Are there better things? Should they be over here or over there? I mean, it can't be a conversation in isolation, which is where I have the most fun. But so I'm buying radio and search engine optimization and search engine marketing across the country. But it's kind of a niche thing. I'm not looking to make a career out of that, but I have a ton of fun doing it.
What's the thing that you have a ton of fun doing it? So I was going to say, what's most enjoyable? So that's probably what's most enjoyable about any of this stuff?
Business turnarounds are just so much fun because you've got to take a really nasty turd and shine it up and find the diamond in it. And something that's hemorrhaging money, that has the bank standing on their throat, employees about to revolt, and an owner who says, boy, if we just hit one more moonshot, let's take this big shot and make it happen. We can turn everything around. But it's that type of thinking that you have to wind back and get them figuring out how to make baby steps in the right direction. And that is wildly fun. At large, where I get the most joy is helping figure out how to put assets in a position to maximize their utility, be it capital, human capital, the right strategies. You've got 35 electricians. What should they be doing? Should they be doing LED retrofits? Should we be doing new construction, which was about 20% of our business and very low margin? No, we should be doing higher margin stuff because we start each year with $3 or $4 million booked out because we couldn't get to it last year. But 20% of the business that we do is low margin. That's crazy. Let's fire ourselves from doing some things. That's where I get the most joy with marketing. I love the hunt. I love finding what levers you can create where they put $1 in and $4 spits out, and then modeling that out to say, is that enough? And what happens if we put in $2? Or, we triple our spend? Are we getting the same ROI? Did we see diminishing marginal returns? And if we did, is that okay?
Yep.
Well, depends on with carpet cleaning, we had repeat customers every 18 to 22 months or so. Someone would call us back just by being in business, right? So I didn't really care what it cost to acquire them, as long as marketing plus cost of goods sold was less than the job average. So $300 job average, 38% cost of goods sold. As long as my marketing was maybe 50% or less of the job, I'm in business because I'm making a little bit of money. I've got all these other jobs over here that are paying all the bills.
Yep.
I'm adding one new marketing source. Say it's 10 or 20,000 bucks on a new radio program. If I have my COGS at 38 and my marketing costs below 50%, I'm acquiring a customer, getting the branding and the opportunity for them to repeat for the cost of a postage on a postcard 18 months from now. And I'll make that 50% back next time.
What do you see in as some of the most recession resistant service-based businesses? Because brick and mortars have been all the rave for a lot of people. Service-based has been like, I don't want to do that. And now service-based is for a lot of people that I work with that want to buy franchises. They're super interested in that now. So what do you see as some of the more recession resistant industry niches within the service-based industry?
Well, you look at services that are optional versus services that are required. I mean, do I have to get my carpet clean? Well, not professionally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are do-it-yourself options, or you can just, live with dirty carpet. I mean, it's not life or death. You have a sewage backup, you're getting that fixed, right? I mean, plumbing services, you got to have that done. Electricians, got to have done. Maybe people say, well, I'm not going to build onto my house, so I'm not going to mess with the wiring or add a new junction box or whatever. But, if you're a troubleshooting expert and you work with old homes with knob and tube, they don't have a choice. When the problem comes up, they got to fix it.
Yep.
So carpet cleaning, we, in 08, 09, the world was not ready to spend at large. Maybe 50% of the market shut down. But there's still a lot of people with a lot of nice stuff that want to get it maintained and get it cleaned. Can we separate ourselves from the pack and be the ones, be greedy when others are fearful, be fearful when others are greedy? Buffett.
Yep.
We were greedy when others were fearful and went out and actively marketed and said, we're going to carve out some turf for ourselves because everyone else is playing defense.
Yep.
But it didn't make us recession proof. But things like water damage, restoration, flood and fire service master. That's recession proof. Alcohol is recession proof. Alcohol service is not recession proof. But selling the booze versus serving the booze, there's a big difference.
Yep.
But so trying to find, I really like the craft brewing and distilling brewing is being turned on its head for several reasons. Distilling is on the uptick, but will face very similar challenges in a couple of years. So trying to be ahead of the curve there, I like it a lot.
Explain that a little bit to me.
So craft brewing, if you started a craft brewery in 2011, you could put a superhero or a cool, caricature on a label, sell really bad beer and be awesome.
Yep.
Right? Because you're local and there's nothing local and all you can get are, national brands, and you do something different. Even if your product wasn't that great, there's shelf space for you and it's ever growing. Well, then the regionals came and local expanded, and then the craft brew from California came. And now all of a sudden in Minneapolis, you've got way more beer than that's really coolly packaged, fresh flavors. And now all of a sudden you have to make super exceptional beer.
Yep.
And even then there's, palates are wide ranging. There's plenty of exceptional beer. So shelf space and product overload. And, some people do crazy seasonal stuff. So it's always new.
Yeah.
So on top of that, there was an assumption that they're going to grow forever. So let's buy a 50,000 foot warehouse, and, they're not doing co-packing or contract brewing or anything like that. They're just trying to sell their beer out of their facility. And 50,000 square feet, you should be doing 100,000 barrels. Well, not a lot of people are doing 100,000 plus barrels. There's been a lot of consolidation, a lot of tomfoolery.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the brands that went bust or got bought for, $1 billion by Constellation and things like that have changed the landscape. Now, distilling is following the same damn footprint.
But where are we in that process of following the footprint? Are we in the very beginning stages for distilleries, or are we kind of halfway?
Probably halfway, where It's not novel anymore. It's still cool to drink local. Local is replacing a whole lot of the national brands. Vodka is cheap to make and kind of hard to screw up. You put a cool label on it, and I'm simplifying, of course. It is an art, and I don't know how to do it. But the shelf space is growing and growing and growing for vodka brands. Whiskey, I mean, used to be an old man's drink. You could, there were 6 bottles. Now there's 70 or 80 or 200 bottles of whiskey on the shelf, and it's all this. It's packaging and people buying from Indiana and doing their thing, but it is getting to the point where there is so much going on that you have to start, actually having a really exceptional product. Now there's more and more exceptional product. So there becomes price pressure and the whole kind of risk that you ran into with craft brewing happening. Not yet in whiskey, but you can see it coming.
It's coming.
Brandy's becoming cool. Different types of schnapps and stuff. I mean, people are going micro with hot sauce and with, where they buy their olive oil. Like there's, all of these things are becoming more craft and organic and kind of being split up in very interesting ways in the CPG world. And I think what happened in craft brewing, that type of pricing pressure and shelf space pressure is going to be happening in a lot of arenas in packaged goods.
So be aware. Just be aware if you're doing that. What about other service-based stuff? What do you wish you had that you had at scale right now?
I love HVAC, and I've got nothing in HVAC. I am a recurring revenue model junkie. One of my favorite books, although it's not the best book, but it really gets you thinking, is The Automatic Customer. It's a book about...
That's an older book, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a handful of years old, and it just breaks down like 8 or 9 different recurring revenue models. And I think they got the one on carpet cleaning wrong, by the way. But what it gets you thinking about is, different ways to package your product to create value. So in HVAC, I love this model, and it's pretty standard in the industry. They take a $130,000 HVAC professional. They'll send them out to your house on contract for $0. They'll $8 a month. And he'll come out twice a year to look at your HVAC and turn on your furnace, turn off your AC, turn off your AC, turn on your furnace. What he's really being paid for is to proactively sell you preventative maintenance, right? So, your doohickey is going to break. We can either do it now or wait till it's 20 below and do it. And you'll be in line with all the other people. You're going to pay more, or we could be proactive. And you pay him to come in and give you that advice. So a company that kind of walked me through their model in Minneapolis called Bonfi, he said, listen, the only thing I really care about are these reoccurring revenue customers. And I don't care. I've got models where they pay $8 a month, and I have models where they pay $120 a month. I don't care which they're on, because give me a little more now, give me a little more later. It nets out that over X amount of time, they give them $8,000. Because eventually something bigger needs to be replaced. And I think it's such a sexy model.
I've heard that, and I haven't read Automatic Customer. I was thinking of a different book when I said that. John Warlow is the one who wrote that book. He also wrote another book called Built to Sell.
He runs a weekly or maybe monthly podcast.
Yep.
He sends out Built to Sell Radio.
Yeah. And I was on that podcast. I was a guest on that podcast.
Oh, no kidding.
Yep. And yeah, he's got, I mean, it's a really good podcast, really good show. I might have brought the value down a little bit on that, but I'm sure that he's had some better guests on there. He's had some amazing guests on there. I mean, amazing. That's one to listen to, but I'm going to order the book, Automatic Customer. I like that. Just things to help you think differently. Like, I'm going to order that because of what you said, because it just helps me think differently. And I think that's what we all need. So I love the reoccurring revenue stuff as well. And I've heard, I keep asking really smart people in franchising, what do you love in the franchise space? Kind of like how I asked you that question. And they say HVAC. They say plumbing and HVAC. I'm like, are you serious? Because both of those required a skilled person and that's kind of one of the barriers to entry. And that's why some people wouldn't want to buy it. But man, I keep hearing that over and over and over. So one of these days, I'll probably start an HVAC franchise. One of these days.
Count me in.
Yeah, no kidding.
What I love, any business where I can utilize mass media, and I get radio. I've never really bought TV, but I understand radio. And when you buy testimonial live and local radio, where the DJ is telling your story, and there's a lot of nuance to which stations and which types of programming will work. But that business model of being able to put out that kind of semi-mass reach and use direct response metrics to acquire customers to put on to a long tail recurring revenue model is just super fun.
That's great. Mike, I don't want to keep you too long. This has been a really fun conversation. I just get into it because it's personal stuff. I want to learn some from you. So I hope the audience, I know they got some value out of it because I have so many retail-based franchises that come on here. And so to have a service-based expert like yourself, how can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
I'd love to say that I've got a sexy website that you could visit.
I would be disappointed if you did, because you're like, you're a service-based guy at heart, a service-based attorney at heart.
You fake it till you make it, right? I want to have the dirty, greaseball shop until I need to professionalize. And eventually we had an 87,000 square foot building that we used. But day one, we were, operating out of like 600 feet, in a strip mall. As I'm reinventing myself, I work from home and coffee shops and try to keep it nimble. But the website will get there. But my email is michaelc6@gmail.com. It's Michael C as in Charlie, the number 6 at Gmail. And happy to talk franchising, happy to talk business investment, happy to talk media, got all sorts of things going on. But I like shooting the bull with people and trying to, figure out their business model. And if I can add value, I love to, whether it's part of an investment or just, over a cup of coffee.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. And I'll put your contact information in the show notes as well.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.